What is your best ghost paranormal experience story? This is my brother's story, but it is a good one. He was working as a night porter at an old hotel from the 18th century in the northern English countryside. One night, a woman came down to reception as white as a sheet with her suitcase saying she could not sleep and did not want to stay there. My brother inquired as to why. She said she could hear children laughing all night and a child had entered her room with a candle and was standing at the foot of the bed and would not leave. My brother mentioned it to his manager the following morning, and he was told that it is a regular occurrence. Before the hotel was a hotel, it used to be used as a school and kindergarten over 100 years ago. Children always cranked the creepiness level to 11. My brother's bedroom was next door to mine growing up. One afternoon, he asked me what I was doing the previous night. That made me laugh so much. Confused, I pressed him for details. About 3 AM last night, your laughter woke me up. It sounded like you were pacing your room. 2. Pacing and laughing. At this point I told him that I was not home last night. I would been at a friend's house. He went pale. To this day he swears blind that it was my laugh. I have a very distinct laugh. Apparently, imposter stories like these are the creepiest, I think. Camping at a friend's family property with a group of friends. They had a huge dingy shop full of old tools and old furniture that was super creepy. Dirt floor, clown paintings in the loft, not even kidding. We stayed up late drinking by the fire, and I was the last one awake. Went to go pee on the side of the shop and stood about 5 feet away looking inside through the window. There was a fluorescent light on, and I noticed what looked like a piece of paper or dollar kind of floating around. I thought it was a moth at first, but it was moving in a very flowing figure 8 pattern that was very rhythmic. It reminded me of dangling a carrot. I watched it for maybe 20 seconds, which felt like forever. Then it quickly floated back to the corner of the shop, where it was dark. There was also a wood chair near the corner that added to the creepiness. Could have been a moth though. I sat back down by the fire to finish my beer and have a smoke. No one else was awake, so I played Robot Unicorn Attack 2 on my phone for a while. I noticed my friend Mark pop out of his tent to pee, then go back in to go to sleep. I decided sleep sounded good, so I went to my tent and fell asleep. The next morning, we were having breakfast and Mark said, "I saw you guys sitting by the fire super late. How late did you stay up?" I told him I was probably 2 or 3 AM. Then he said, "Who was up with you?" I told him I was the last man standing. He said, "I got up to pee and saw you on your phone and 2 people over your shoulder watching you play." He said one person looked bigger, so he thought it was one of our friends, who was a bigger dude. He said the other person was taller and skinny, but none of us are noticeably tall or skinny. Freaked me out. We still camp at that property once a year, but I do not go in the shop, and I go to sleep whenever my wife decides she is tired. Ghosts just trying to figure out WTF you doing. Ghosts be like, man, we died before this came out. We missed video games. Damn, they re lucky. Him to the ghosts. Now like, that doesn't even matter. The pressures of modern life and a more individually isolated society will corner you into a deep depression, where you can't even enjoy video games anymore. You guys think you are ghosts? Wait until you get ghosted by the only 3 girls you matched with on the only app that people use to try to find a romantic connection. When I was a kid, my favorite uncle was the youngest in the family. He was my hero. He had just finished high school, and I was like 10 or 11. We would go and visit on spring break and over the course of the summer, and I always looked forward to seeing the guy. We'd listen to records and tapes, and he introduced me to bands like The Cult and Inx's, The Doors, Bowie, Stevie Ray Vaughan. As I entered my teenage years, my life started, and my friends became the center of my universe, and those spring break and summer visits eventually stopped happening. Eventually I graduated high school, and around the same time my uncle started a family. A few years out of high school, and my mom called me up and let me know my uncle had passed away. I hadn't seen him in a few years, and when I asked what happened, the only reply I could get was he was sick. It wasn't until years later I found out he had taken his own life. He didn't leave a note or anything, but the general consensus was he learned he didn't have long to live and took the easy way out. Here's where things get interesting for me. Shortly after the funeral I start having dreams. I am a pretty lucid dreamer. Not in the sense that I can decide what I want to happen in a dream, but I can recall my dreams in vivid detail. Maybe there is another word for that. I don't know. Anyways, I started having dreams about my uncle. Sometimes we were just sitting in his room from when I was a kid, listening to music and making jokes. Over time they became very strange. One dream I had, we were in a movie theater sitting really close to the screen and we were eating popcorn. The screen was playing something, but I couldn't distinguish what it was. And my uncle was talking, but I could not figure out what he was trying to say. Another was the two of us in a hallway and all the doors were locked. The most troubling dream I had about the guy, which was also the most recurring, is when I would find him sitting at a rope bridge. He would stare at this bridge and get up and try to walk across it, but there are snakes that would strike at him when he tried to cross. A snake would snip at him and he'd go back to where he was sitting and just look at me, then look at the bridge. So I'd walk onto this bridge and look across, and every few feet is a very angry snake all the way across. I grabbed my uncle's hand and took him out on the bridge, and he would be apprehensive because of the snakes. So I stood in front of him and kinda hopped up and down on the bridge. The momentum, or whatever you call it, from me bouncing on this rickety old bridge made the snakes angry, but if you bounced enough on it, the snakes would eventually teeter over the side. It was a very strange eureka kind of dream. So my uncle would step out onto the bridge, walk a few feet, bounce the bridge, so the snakes would fall off. The dream would always end with my uncle making it across the bridge and me getting this feeling of reluctance to follow him across. Then I would wake up with this overwhelming feeling of sadness. These dreams happened for almost 20 years. Always the same. Me and my uncle shooting the shit, or me helping him solve a puzzle of some sort. The snake and rope bridge was the most common. Never told a soul in my family about what my uncle and I were up to. I always thought it would be upsetting. Like he wasn't at rest. Like he was in purgatory or something. Maybe he was. I eventually just came to accept that my uncle was haunting me, and for the most part one didn't he mind. My grandmother died a few years ago. Nothing tragic. She caught pneumonia and never really recovered from it. One night she went to sleep and never woke up. We celebrated her life, hugged and healed the way families do when death comes to visit. Since my grandmother's funeral, I haven't had a single dream about my uncle. Not one. I think that was the confirmation I needed that there is something out there for us after we die. Or maybe my grandmother passing away was the catharsis I needed to let my uncle go. I look back on it now, and I like to think that my uncle was just lost. He was lost in life, and that carried on in death. I also think my grandmother, on her way to the sweet hereafter, found her baby boy, picked him up, dusted him off, and brought him home. That's really beautiful. Thank you for sharing. I had just started a new job. The building I worked in was really old, definitely pre-war. I had to stay a bit later than I normally would to get something done, and by the time I was packing up to leave, my floor was pretty empty. I needed to use the restroom before I left, so I walked over there, and as I approached the door I saw someone else open the door and go in. I remember vividly that they were wearing a pink shirt and khakis, because that's what I was wearing too. I was also mildly annoyed, because I do not like being in the bathroom when someone else is in there. After deciding I still definitely needed to pee before the commute home, I entered the bathroom, but when I got in, it was completely empty. I do not know how to describe the energy in the room, but it was very tense, completely silent. I remember being able to hear my heartbeat. After standing completely frozen for what felt like 10 minutes, it was probably like 15 seconds. I turned right around and left. I had nightmares about that bathroom for weeks. It seems so simple and uninteresting compared to a lot of other people's stories here, but it really shook me. There was something definitely off about the whole thing. Glad I work from home now. I think you saw yourself, bro. Yeah. Obviously the ghost opened the bathroom door so that op just saw themselves in the mirror. A bit paranormal perhaps. My grandfather got into the hospital on a Friday night. Nothing too unusual. He was not doing good, but he had been there before. The next day, I go to work. I'm somewhat worried, but again, he had been there before. I go on with my day. There are customers. A friend stops by and we talk. And I fill the rest of the time with homework. My grandfather is in the back of my mind, but I have other stuff going on. You know. Right around 4 o'clock, I was chatting with a coworker when I glanced at the clock and my stomach dropped. I randomly got filled with dread and profound sadness. I continue chatting, but the feeling persists. I check out at 5. The feeling of gloom persisting, and of course my brain goes to my grandfather. I just knew. I get home, and my mother tells me my grandfather passed away. I ask around what time. 4 o'clock. I had a similar experience with my aunt. Just a normal day at work, and then I get this overwhelming feeling of dread and anxiety out of nowhere. An hour later I get a call from my mom letting me know that my aunt had been in a car crash an hour earlier and had died at the scene. I had a similar experience with my great uncle. He was in hospice care in September, and I felt like I should check in with him. Suddenly one day, I called him, and we talked for a while. He passed away the next day. When my middle child was about 2, 5, 3 we lived on an old house with a lot of poorly built self-done renovations done on it. There was an under-house storage area, workshop area accessible from one of the bedrooms. This workshop has a hatch door to the dirt under the house. Anyway, my daughter used to complain about the blue lady that lives under the house. We moved and never heard about it again. Ever hear the harmonica at night? Maybe she meant blues lady. Bleeding gum Susan. Best damned blues lady on the Mississippi Delta. The house I grew up in was haunted. The way it was laid out I could see from my bedroom down the hall and into the living room. My parents' bedroom door was on the other side of the living room directly across from my door. Late at night I would hear someone pacing circles in the living room, but I was the only one awake in the house and we didn't have pets. I never said anything because I didn't want the family to think I was nuts. Eventually I moved out and went to college. After I graduated I was in a rough spot financially. My parents had bought a new house. The old one was still empty. They were considering getting renters and offered it to me to stay in for a while. I said no, I didn't want to move in. Mom asked why. I finally gave in and told her I thought there was a ghost. My mom froze and turned to look at me and was like, you hear her too? Turns out she had also heard it for years and didn't say anything for the same reason. So moms knew the joint was haunted and was cool with you living there alone. Nice. When I was like 14, I was with a friend riding mountain bikes way out in the woods. We decided to turn back and go home for the day. We must have been 2 miles from any houses. Walking up the hill we just rode down from was this old guy with minor clothes from the 1800s carrying a bucket. He was walking up the hill with his back towards us. He was only for a few seconds and then he disappeared. We were both silent when I said I thought I saw something. He goes, yeah, me too. He perfectly described the guy. We got out of there very quick. This was in northern Arizona where they used a gold mine. There was even this old miner's cabin about a mile from us. This dude was real. He just dropped his invisibility cloak on accident. Should have followed him for his secret stash. The good stuff. The good cash. Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe for more videos.